Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is Shayna and you're watching Shayna Cossette Birding. In today's video, I am going to be telling you the story behind seeing my lifer pelagic bird, which is an open water ocean bird in Saskatchewan, Canada. This is not at all where I expected to see my first pelagic bird, and there's quite a bit of a story behind it, and we've gotten more information as the weeks have gone on. So let's get into that, and then at the end of the video, I'm also going to give you guys a little bit of an update as to where I've been and why I haven't posted on YouTube in a month. So let's start off with where I'm located. I live in Stony Rapids, Saskatchewan, which is a very small community, approximately 80 kilometers from the border of the Northwest Territories. Basically, right dab smack in the middle of continental Canada and right on the center line of North America. Basically, I'm nowhere near an ocean. I'm about as far as you can get on either side from either the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean. So how did an ocean-dwelling bird end up here? So this story starts on Friday, November 22nd. So this is a few weeks ago now. I woke up in the morning, and when I checked my phone, I had a text message from one of my neighbors in town who said, hey, one of the people at work found a bird and they think it's not from here. It looks very different. It is a all black bird with a very thin bill. Could you come over and maybe identify it for us? Immediately, I was trying to think of what it could possibly be because the person who had found it is quite knowledgeable about the bird species in the area. They've been living here for 20 years. My dog just moved the tripod. They've been living here for 20 years, and so they have a very extensive knowledge of what is normal for this area. So that piqued my curiosity. I got bundled up and headed over. Meanwhile, I was trying to brainstorm what it could possibly be with a thin bill. I was thinking all black bird, maybe it's some sort of weird grackle or blackbird that's like really super lost, but I really didn't have any ideas. So I got to the shop and I got taken to where they were holding the bird, and I immediately knew this bird was not supposed to be here and that I had my third rare bird in 2 months had shown up in town. So I don't have a lot of experience with pelagic shorebirds, obviously being an inlander, but I do know that it was in some sort of seagull fish-eating bird category, and they had already done some research at the store and thought it might be a sooty shearwater. And so when I looked that up, I was definitely agreeing there's a lot of characteristics of sooty shearwaters, but I made sure to go onto my Merlin app to double check and make sure there weren't any other possibilities, and that is where we found out that short-tailed shearwaters and sooty shearwaters are very, very similar. So right off the bat, I was able to narrow it down to one of these two species. I do have a quick video of the bird in hand. We're looking it over, I'm trying to capture on a cell phone video really quickly any ID features that may be useful to have. So I'm gonna put that in here now so you guys can see what we were dealing with as we were trying to identify this bird. So the first thing I asked was the story of how this bird was found. I was really curious if it was injured, what kind of conditions the person found it in. And so they were driving along the road back into town and spotted this black bird in the middle of the road just kind of sitting there. They had thought maybe it was a spruce grouse or something similar, and so they stopped. They recognized it was different, and they said that the bird allowed them to just walk up, pick it up, and put it into the vehicle with them. So there are a lot of foxes and dogs that run freely in town, so it was at a high risk of predation, and it was also really, really cold, and they had brought it back to the shop just to warm up and see what the next step should be. So once I did that quick look over, determined there was no major injuries that were present that at least I could determine, we called wildlife rescue. As you should with any bird or wildlife that you find, if it's not in immediate danger and it's not at immediate risk of harm or dying, whether from temperatures or predators or a vehicle or anything else, do leave the wildlife or bird in place. If it is in harm of, say, being caught by a cat or a predator or something else, you can get it into a cardboard box or some kind of containment and move it out. But whenever possible, if you're going to be contacting a wildlife rescue about a sick or possibly injured wildlife, it's best to avoid contact if you can. Just always be careful with handling wildlife, especially if you don't have training or permits. Call somebody first if you're not sure what to do. The bird was probably not injured and likely just exhausted or too cold, so I went ahead and called wildlife rescue to see what they recommended we do with it. There are a few different routes you can take when you find a bird like this. The most ideal scenario is that you're able to transport the bird back to its original home range, if that's possible, and allow it to continue on its migration journey. Now, in this case, that would involve multiple provinces, at least one plane, if not two, and also potentially crossing the Canada-US border. And you need documentation and permitting to move birds across those state and provincial lines to do so legally and properly. That is a lot of paperwork that takes a lot of time that would extend this bird's captivity process and time in captivity, and so it's not a route that the wildlife rescue wanted to go on. The second option is to rehabilitate it over the winter and let it continue its journey in warmer weather. This is also a very big use of resources. Because the shearwater isn't a species that's at risk, we decided to go with the third option, which would be give it a rest, let it stay inside, and then to release it into open water because we do have running water in front of town. So while it may have a lower chance of survival, and in reality it has a very, very low chance of survival, that is the option we decided to take. So at this point, what we know is that it is a shearwater species, either sooty or short-tailed. It most likely is not majorly injured, and that the plan is to release it back on open water. And the reason I'm specifically talking about open water is because pelagic bird species, along with other species like grebes that have legs positioned at the back half of their body, can't actually start flying or take off from land. So they need a span of open water in order to take off. So we gave the shearwater some thawed frozen minnows that they had as fish bait at the store, gave it some hours to warm up, and as the bird was warming up, it was becoming much more active, it was becoming lively, it did eat some of the fish it was offered, and so we thought we had a best chance head start that we could have given it to continue on its journey. So at that point, I went back to the store, picked up the bird, and we headed down to the river to do a release. I did take a very short video of the release. The bird is quite disoriented, and so in total transparency, it doesn't look the greatest. However, once it got adjusted, it did freely start swimming and diving and flapping its wings on the water, and I took a lot of pictures to document that as well. So I am gonna cut the video off just because I don't think we need to continue to see the bird in a kind of struggling position. I am letting you know it did struggle at first at release. I'm not at all surprised. My parrotlet is decided to join the conversation. I'm not at all surprised because this bird was likely exhausted, and that's likely what brought it down to land in the first place. So this, we have a very, very lost shearwater, and we're gonna let it go and hope for the best. So at this point in the story, we have released the bird. We have determined it is either a sooty or a short-tailed shearwater, and now became the task of actually trying to get a specific identification for this bird. Either of these birds were obviously going to be a lifer for me. And I honestly didn't even know what characteristics I needed to document in order to be able to tell the difference. So this is when I start putting out posts onto the rare bird alert pages on Facebook, a few Discord groups that have very, very experienced birders, and I also obviously sent in the eBird report to my eBird reviewer. So at this point, everybody started passing around the pictures and the video to anybody who might have more expertise, and eventually we were able to get a couple experts who have a lot of experience with pelagic birds. One is even a pelagic bird guide down in the States who confirmed that it was in fact a short-tailed shearwater. So that is a lifer for me, and once again, I never expected my lifer pelagic was going to be A, in Saskatchewan, but B, in Stony Rapids. What a crazy year of birding up here. And if you haven't seen my other 2 rare birds I found earlier this year, I'm gonna link the video in the card for you to see that as well. And so at this point, I wanna say a huge thank you to absolutely anyone who helped with the identification. I am not skilled nor qualified enough to make that call on my own. And so if you weighed in, sent a message, or forwarded pictures on to somebody else who might be able to help, thank you so much. This was such a fun and exciting time of birding in Saskatchewan. And also it was just really, really cool to be a part of this whole process. So as I mentioned, pelagic seabirds are open water feeding birds, and the short-tailed shearwater primarily lives in the Pacific Ocean. They have wintering ranges along the coast up through BC and into Alaska, and then they actually have a breeding range down in Australia. So this bird being in Saskatchewan was obviously super lost, and also makes it really exciting to have found. Some of the differences between the sooty and short-tailed shearwater are very, very specific and also very small. There is a difference in the tail, with the short-tailed shearwater having a slightly shorter tail, I believe. And then the main identifying feature that was used to determine is that on the beak itself, they have the nostrils and then the rest of the beak. That ratio is used through measurement to determine between sooty and short-tailed shearwater. And then there's also the steepness or the angle of the forehead. So those two, the bill, which was measured via pixels, so it's not as accurate as having a field measurement, and the slant of the forehead were the 2 features that we were able to use to narrow down to short-tailed shearwater, for those of you who are interested. The best theory we have for why this bird showed up here is that they moved into the Arctic Ocean due to the retreating sea ice from warmer temperatures, and then as the ice started pushing its way inward, they flew overland, and this one ended up stopping here in town. There have also been reports of these birds in the Hudson Bay and as well as the Great Lakes in both Canada and the United States, which all of those are out of their range as well. So this is also more evidence indicating that they're likely moved inward over the top of Canada and then are trying to migrate south using a different route. So that is the story of how I documented the 2nd provincial first record of the year and the 3rd extremely rare bird for Stony in the fall of 2024. I hope you guys really enjoyed this story, and I'm really sorry that it came out later than when the whole thing actually happened. So I'm gonna get into that now. But if this is all you want to listen to and you're not as interested about my personal life, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you subscribe to not miss more videos I have coming out in the near future. But for those of you who are interested in why it's been over a month since I posted and why a story about November 22nd is only coming out now in the middle to end of December, I want to get into a little bit of my personal story here. So I actually have been diagnosed with a couple chronic illnesses, one of them being endometriosis, which I am on medication for and manage quite well. But the other one is ulcerative colitis, which is an inflammatory bowel disease. And because it's chronic and there is no cure, I go through a constant cycle of having my symptoms be in remission and then having what are called flares, where all of my symptoms kind of flare back up and I have a lot of health complications that come with that. One of those health complications is that I get extremely fatigued. I have no energy. I'm borderline bedridden, but not quite. I am able to get up for a few hours at a time each day. But I have been in a flare for the past two 2.5 weeks now. I have been going to doctor's appointments. I'm working with a new doctor to try to get on better treatment, and I had a whole bunch of issues getting medical records from a previous doctor. Thankfully, because I'm in Canada, this isn't a huge financial cost to me, and I'm able to get medicine that will hopefully make my next remission period extend much longer. But that was most of the reason as to why I haven't been posting. And then prior to having those health complications, there was a week that I was not at home because I had an unexpected loss in the family, and we traveled south to go to the funeral for that person. So I took another week off for that. So that is kind of where I've been while I was down south. Even though the trip was not intentionally for birding, I was able to do a little bit of birding, and I'll have a video similar style to this coming out soon about that as well. But I also hope that you guys are super excited for the upcoming new year, 2025. I have some really big plans for video ideas and birding ideas on this channel, including a collaboration video that is going to be coming out in January with some of your favorite bird tubers. We're going to do a little challenge tag, and I will explain all about that in the new year. So in the meantime, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you guys in the next video.